everyone feels heard and that their opinions matter in this space, okay? So the other piece is there may be something that I speak about on today that you've never heard of. If that is the case, if there's something that goes over your head, I want you to stop me. Like I said, this is a conversation, right? And so you don't in regular life have a conversation with someone and not ask questions or interrupt if there's something that is going past you. And so I want you to feel free to stop, ask, get clarity, because I want us all to be able to enjoy this together and be able to walk away having the same understanding, okay? The other piece is keep an open mind. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about a ton of things. I don't want to be married to the agenda because we only have an hour, and this topic is one that could be covered in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, or 3. So as much as these are some of the things that we will be talking about, I'm not married to this, okay? So let's start with bias. So let me ask you this. What comes to mind when we hear the term bias? And please feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat, but talk to me about what comes to mind.
Judgment.
Judgment, okay.
Yeah, predetermination about what you think or feel.
Absolutely. What else?
Your prior experience or knowledge of something.
Okay, I like that holistic view. I like that. Now, I forgot one thing. One thing, y'all, one thing. When I get excited, you're gonna get the stank face. The stank face means, you done said something real good, or you're gonna get the snaps, okay? So I want you to know, I know y'all don't know me yet. By the end of this, I'm gonna be like your little sister, your cousin, your auntie. We're gonna be family by the end of this, right? So I wanna let you in on some of my mannerisms so you understand where it's coming from, okay? All right, so I love that you all shared your understanding of what bias is. So I'm gonna give you a working definition. Bias is a disproportionate weight in favor of or against an idea or thing, usually in a way that is closed-minded, prejudicial, or unfair. Biases can be innate or learned. People may develop biases for or against an individual, a group, or a belief. Now, I know that is a longer definition. At its core, the most foundational piece of what a bias is a preference. So I love what Justin said. It was a broader view of it. When you look at what bias is, it's a preference. Sometimes when we think about the term bias, it comes off as a negative word. And so I want us to understand that every single person on this call has biases of some sort. And so when you look at it from the perspective of it's a negative thing and I don't want to have them, then you try to distance yourself from it. And maybe you weren't thinking of it from the perspective of self-awareness about the biases that you may hold. But now that I've let you in on the secret that we all have biases, maybe now, hopefully, you'll be able to internalize it and think about the ways in which you may be biased. Okay, so there are, there are a couple of different kinds. We have implicit bias, which is when we have attitudes about people based on associations or stereotypes without our conscious knowledge of it, okay? And then you have overt bias, which is done or shown plainly, readily apparent, not secret or hidden. And so those are the two major implicit, unconscious, those terms that are used interchangeably. And then you have overt bias. And within that, you have a number of different biases. You have affinity bias. You may have age bias. You may have gender bias. You may have Horn's effect. And I know that I'm providing a lot. Go back. We talk about affinity. We're talking about something about them connects with you. And so at that point, you now have a bias towards this individual. So you all, my college experience, and I'm an alumni of Florida A&M University, okay? And so the thing about Florida A&M University is we tend to be excited when we see somebody else that went to our school. So if I was in a hiring situation and I saw someone that came from my school, I may have a bias towards hiring them because we got something, okay? Or gender bias. As a woman, I tend to, I'll give you an example. I had a situation where I was giving a presentation and I walked into a room with two people that I did not know. It was a woman and a man. Both were a different racial identity than myself. And the person that I asked my question to was the woman. For me, there was a level of comfort because we had the same gender. And it was something that I did unconsciously. You understand what I'm saying? So that's something that is an unconscious thing, whereas there may be an overt bias of on a construction site, a manager not hiring a woman because they believe that a woman cannot do that particular labor or whatever the case may be. And so that's something that is overt and not covert. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Talking about age bias. I am a millennial, okay? And so for the longest time, for like the last 10, 15 years within the work environment, I've heard people say, oh, those millennials, you know they're gonna be late. You know, you got to check on behind those people, or they're gonna have their cell phone. Like it was, we were the butt of every joke, okay? Right? And so there was that ageist thing going on. Am I the only one that's experienced this? Now, we have, now there may also be the bias towards age as well. So all those boomers, you know, they're not going to be technologically savvy. Oh, they're going to have to go to a whole bunch of doctors' meetings. You don't want to hire them, right? So there are certain biases that even if you have not said it, you've heard it, or you've experienced it for yourself. Okay, I saw some laughter going on because I must be talking right. So some of you all have experienced some of these things. Anybody want to share anything?
I don't want to share anything, but I do see a question in the chat from Althea, and she asks, is overt bias the same as explicit bias?
Yes, 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 yes. So unconscious and implicit and overt and explicit, those are the two that are synonymous with each other. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you, Justin. And I'm so glad that you monitor in the chat for me because I sure can't see it. I can't see my presenter notes. I can't see the chat. So y'all getting the rawness on this afternoon. Okay. So I've already talked about the different types of bias. There are a bunch of them, but I wanted to go over some of the major ones. Horn's effect is a bias. And so Horn's effect is when a person has an attribute or an identity that you have a negative impression of. And because of that negative impression, now everything about the person is wrong. So y'all, I'm gonna go there, okay? If I see a certain bumper sticker on somebody's car, I assume they're gonna cut me off. They're gonna probably give me the finger or whatever the case may be because of the traits that I place on persons that may have a specific tag on their car. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah. Am I the only one? Listen, y'all not gonna have me out here telling my business by myself now. Y'all go ahead and unmute and tell your business too, okay? I'm not gonna be out here putting my business out in these streets by myself, okay? So this is something that was, it says ripped from the headlines, but this is another bias that we see. Within the work environment, resumes in the hiring component, there is a disproportionate amount of individuals that have ethnic sounding names that tend to have issues with getting in for an interview. Some forward-thinking companies have made it where identifying information such as name, race, gender, those sorts of identifying characteristics that could cause a person to be unconsciously biased are not seen. It's just the experience, and if they have the experience that is needed or wanted for the specific role, they go on to the next level. But recognize this is literally a Google search, and some of the things, some of the biases that disproportionately impact certain cultural groups, and how certain individuals have had to code switch in order to be able to get employment or be called in for interviews. And when I say code switching is when a person of a minority identity assimilates and takes on the characteristics of the majority identity in order to be considered a part of the norm and to be accepted. And so within the resume arena, that would be, instead of putting your full name, putting your first initial and maybe last name, so that a person isn't able to see the spelling of your name and that cause a bias. So just putting that into perspective, just some of the biases that we see within the work environment. So this is
Brittany,
one example. Yes, Ms. Shawn.
So I wanted to acknowledge one thing in the chat, and that's Katrina said obesity and aesthetics. And that one is a huge one, because as a slim, thick woman myself, people often give you the once over, like, oh, okay, and so I do think people, you're judged because of size, appearance, a lot of biases come up with those two things. And so I wanted to just kind of put that out there. And then also I wanted to go back to the code switching, because I code switch. And it's one of those things that I think it comes from a place of having to fit into certain situations. So for me, it typically comes up when I'm not comfortable. That's when my voice really, really changes. And so I'm glad that you mentioned code switching, because in a lot of conversations about biases, people often leave that one out.
I want to add 2 cents in keeping with this topic. I'm bilingual. It's on my business card. It's on my website. It's on our company website. I can't tell you how many times when I go work in the rural counties going west, how I get the comments about how well spoken I am, how I have very good speech, how well I speak English. How come I don't have an accent? Am I American? I mean, I can't tell. If I had $1 for every time I've been told this in the time that I've worked for my agency, I wouldn't need to work anymore. So it also happens to bilingual people. And I speak English well, but I can't. And my name is Yolanda Gillette, but before I got divorced, my last name was Candelaria. So immediately before I stepped foot anywhere, my first and last name, there was already a bias about who I am, how I speak, how I carry myself. So this is really touching a nerve with me.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And it sounds like somebody else is trying to say something.
Yes, this is Alethea. I'm sorry. I am in my car at the moment. I just pulled over. This is a lot of times my name is mispronounced as Althea, and it is Alethea. And so when I have gone into interviews, the first thing is Alethea. Your name is pronounced Alethea. I thought it was Althea. And I say to them, it means the same. However, the next question is, for me, the next question that is asked, or the next statement that has been made very bluntly is, oh, I didn't realize that you were African American, because I thought your name was Althea. And I think to myself, I don't know any people who are not of color whose name is Althea. I don't personally know anybody. I know several Altheas. I know a few Aletheas, but we are all African American, every last one of them. So in my mind, I'm wondering, am I biased? do I not know, you know, and it's not code switching, because I have been that person as well, where I've code switched because I've already have this preconceived notion about my own name going into things like an interview, and then having spoken on the phone and people thinking, oh, I didn't know you were Black because of the way you speak. When I first moved to Florida, I heard that so many times about, you're so well spoken, I didn't know you were Black. What does that mean?
I used to get, oh, you're not Black because my name is Yolanda.
Yolanda.
So I got the opposite.
Yeah, Yolanda. I like what she said. Like when people say, "Oh, well, I can't pronounce your name," because a lot of people can't pronounce Ambria correctly. So they'll say, "Oh, well, can I like give you a nickname?" And it's like, when I was growing up, I just said, "Yeah, sure, whatever, like Bria, whatever you want to call me." But then my mom like made it very apparent that like, this is the name that I gave you, and people are gonna have to say your name correctly. So you know, I just learned that, and like maybe a couple of years ago now, I'm actually now you know, making people know that, hey, this is how you pronounce it, and this is what you're gonna call me.
I love that you all are sharing. This is making me so happy. And I want to even touch a little bit further on this code switching thing. Thinking about bias within interviewing, thinking about wanting to get ahead and what that looks like. It even goes as far as the way that you wear your hair to an interview. As a person of color, and me liking my different hairstyles, I would make sure that the hairstyle that I wore wasn't too ethnic. And then once I got in there, then you was gonna get all of this. You understand what I'm saying? But as trying to get in the door, you understand what I'm saying? You might get a blonde, Farrah Fawcett, you know, situation, because my appearance wasn't going to be the reason why I didn't get the job. You understand what I'm saying? And that in and of itself, just thinking about what that means, the fact that you're having to change something about yourself because you believe that the environment or the individuals or the culture of that organization may not be accepting of you, is at a place that you actually to work. Just something to think about. And those individuals that are in leadership on this call, that's something to think about. Have you seen a complete 180 once a person comes into the work environment, and where is that coming from? The other piece is, and I know that I'm jumping ahead, but talking about the Great Resignation, that's a topic that is a DEI topic. Does everybody on the call know what the Great Resignation is? No? Ooh, we about to get into this. Okay. So once COVID hit, from COVID till now, there has been an influx of individuals leaving their jobs. There is a labor shortage out because people have left their jobs. Now, some people have stated that the service industry and different industries that have been impacted by this, they have left their jobs because of those checks that were coming in. I forget what the name of the checks are, but it was the checks that everybody that was a taxpayer, they got those checks to help with, you know, it was like COVID relief. Stimulus, thank you so much. So some people said that the stimulus checks were the reason why a lot of people were leaving, because they didn't have to work. Their apartments, they couldn't get kicked out of their apartments, and they were getting paid and staying home, right? But if you
excuse me, actually, those were the unemployment checks that the government was giving. Stimulus, everybody got a stimulus check. but not everybody got an unemployment check unless they were actually unemployed. So the federal government gave an additional $600 and more in some states, in addition to what the state unemployment was giving. So that's how the Great Resignation, it was from that money. People didn't want to go back to work because if you're making $10 an hour, now you're getting $800 per week. Times 4 weeks, you're getting $3,200 a month. That's way more than working 40 hours a week at $10 an hour. So that's what happened. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And who is this talking?
This is Alethea Houston Thompson.
Hey, okay. I'm so sorry because I can't see your face. And so I'm just, you were just like, you jumped in there. Thank you so much that you did. But I'm making the point of, some people said that was the reason for the Great Resignation. And what I will tell you is that may partially be true, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that many people, when we were on lockdown, were not having to go into the office and were able to work from home or have a flexible situation. And the ability to not have to code switch, the ability to not have to deal with microaggressions on a daily basis became something enticing for people to no longer want to go into the actual office. And so, yes, I can't take away some of the impact that was stated by Miss Alethea, but what I will is, even me, myself, I left my brick and mortar job to get a better situation where I wasn't having to culturally assimilate. I created my own business in that time because I got tired of code switching. And so looking at it not just from the superficial layer, the iceberg was on the top, oh, it's just this. Let's delve deeper into what could have contributed to the Great Resignation and how we can possibly get qualified applicants back into the work environment and retain those individuals, is the reason why I bring that up. So just putting that out there. All right. So we are going to move on over to, we've already kind of paused for the cause for this. We're going to skip over that because it's 2:28, y'all. I only got 32 minutes left with y'all. OMG, it's only 1/3 of the way in. So what are some contemporary issues in the workplace? So we've already talked about the Great Resignation, but I want you all, get your Twitter fingers going or unmute yourself. Talk to me about some contemporary issues within the diversity, equity, and inclusion space that are impacting the work environment now.
So Katrina just dropped in microaggressions.
Yes. Okay. So let me draw you all in. Okay. Microaggressions is one of my favorite topics to discuss, but a microaggression is, there are 3 different types. There is a micro invalidation, there is a micro assault, and then there is a micro insult. A micro invalidation is invalidating a person's feelings or their experience. And so it is things like, oh, you're being sensitive. Did they really say that? Is that how you took it? That would be considered a micro invalidation. A micro assault is explicit and overt. Okay, so there is no question in your mind that this person meant to say whatever it was that they said. And so an example of this would be calling COVID-19 the China virus, or racial epithets, displaying the Confederate flag. Those are symbols and examples that, even if, because I do know certain individuals that they represent, they believe that the Confederate flag is something that is a part of their cultural background, their identity. There is a level of pride that comes with it. However, at this stage in 2022, everyone knows what those specific symbols represent for certain identities. When you display these things, you're displaying it knowing that it has an impact on certain individuals, okay? And so You were going to say, Yolanda?
I was going to say that another thing that I notice, at least in certain workplaces, is we now have a culture of inclusivity with the pronouns. And I have seen older generations from the Generation X and the boomers have a conflict with the newer generation in their wanting the inclusivity to be a part of the work environment. So I'm assuming that would be a contemporary issue.
But would that be, would you consider that to be a micro assault?
A micro assault.
Or a micro invalidation?
You tell me, you're the expert. I don't know.
It depends. It depends.
It depends.
It depends. It depends. And this is why I say this. So even with the pronouns, and I'm glad that you mentioned pronouns, because it is something that I'm still figuring out. Even as a DEI professional. And when I say I'm still figuring it out, what I mean is this: there is no blanket statement. Like, I cannot generalize that in every situation I'm going to provide my pronouns or ask someone theirs, because in some instances you may be outing someone by asking them their pronouns. If this person is not in a space of wanting to share their identity, then providing this and asking for it back could be considered an oppressive thing. I've done that. I, thinking that I was being inclusive, have been like, my name is Brittany, I'm she, her, hers, and you are, you know what I mean? And the person that I did this to was incredibly upset that I asked. And so just putting that out there, the thing with pronouns, I will tell you that I love to put them on emails as in my signature line. I will introduce myself with pronouns in certain situations, but I have learned not to ask anyone what their pronouns are. So recognizing that even myself, a person that truly my life is about being inclusive and inclusive language and being an ally, I have made some missteps with that. And so when we're talking about the older generation or a boomer or the silent generation, is it coming from a place of truly not understanding what it is, or is it a situation where I understand what it is, but I'm refusing to do it?
Right.
And so if it is a blatant refusal after being educated, then that could be considered a micro insult. If it is a person that truly just doesn't understand, and they're just like, I feel like I can't say anything, I don't want to offend anyone, that may tend to go towards a micro invalidation. Kim Ross, were you going to say something? Hello, welcome.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fabulous.
Yeah, so I have a few experiences of using pronouns, and we do, as an organization, now put our pronouns in our signature. I agree entirely, though, about outing people or not outing people. So when we introduce ourselves, and have like a round robin, we say, and your pronouns if you would like to share them, which takes off the pressure from that perspective. And then I just shared in the chat, my minister actually uses they, them pronouns, and their most recent email with me had that link as a right next to their pronouns, and it says why pronouns matter, and then it's linked in their signature line. I asked them if I could borrow it, and they said yes, and I'm going to add that to my signature line because I think it's a very helpful thing. I do think that there's a lot of older people that don't understand, but you border on don't understand too. Oh, and I don't really want to bother. Yeah, so when people finally realize, oh, this is actually something that matters to somebody else, I think that's when most of them start trying to be respectful and trying to use it.
Can you bring up and it's okay for me to call you by your first name, Kim?
Oh, please, that's fine.
Awesome. And I just said that we should not make generalizations. However, humans are very involved and self-absorbed. And so unfortunately, sometimes it takes knowing someone who this matters to, and you have a heart connection with them to change. If it doesn't directly impact you or someone that you care about, many times, like you said, I don't even want to bother with that because it doesn't impact me. And that's getting into that privilege piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So y'all, listen, I get real excited and we going a little further ahead, Kim, because you over here dropping these knowledge bombs off. So anybody else wanted to add some other contemporary issues happening in the workplace?
Hi, this is Katrina Rivers. I'm actually a registered nurse, and I was on a panel the other day where they gave a scenario where a doctor approached a nurse's desk and all of the people there were Black. And he said, I'm looking for a nurse. Can someone get a nurse to help me? So every Black woman at that station was a registered nurse. And they just went on with their work, didn't say anything back to him. And he proceeded down the hallway in search of a nurse. So that was a scenario that was presented, and we were asked some follow-up questions. I, for one, did not have a problem with their response. Other people went on to say that they should have said to him, well, I'm a nurse and I can help you. And then people introduced the concern about patient safety. But here, my take on that is, I don't think that the person upon whom a microaggression has been enacted should be held responsible for correcting the person who made the microaggression against them. Okay, because that's almost tantamount to suggesting that somehow you're complicit in their continuation of what they do that's inappropriate. So what is ideal is that you have a structure, an organizational structure in place where something like that can be reported. And then that designated person can go and say, hey, we heard that this incident occurred. We want to talk to you in terms of talking to that doctor. Because when people express in that way, they're not open to correction at all. And so no matter how, soft you think you are when you are trying to correct them, that can be misconstrued as aggression in and of itself. And so if he took the time to hunt around for a nurse, and if you felt like there was a patient safety issue involved, he has a license to protect just like the nurse does. So how safe are his patients really if he's walking around with the mentality that a Black woman can't be a registered nurse to begin with? And so a lot of times we like to put the onus on the person upon whom this violence, and it is an act of violence, upon whom it's being exacted, as the person who should be making the corrections, and they're not, especially when there's a power differential involved. So ideally, organizations should have that person to whom it can be reported, and that person can go and speak to the individual that's in question, whose behavior is in question. And there are a lot of organizations that have that culture in place.
Absolutely. And I need to add microaggressions to my contemporary list. I do not have that as part of my contemporary list, but the way that you just went down that explanation, brilliant. Wow, I will tell you that my approach, especially when I'm giving these kinds of having these kinds of conversations, have been to have a person to assess whether or not they are, how to respond in situations where they are impacted by a microaggression. And so one, is this a person that you have to deal with more than once? Is the person in a position to accept what it is that you are saying? Are you emotionally in a space to be able to process what has occurred? And so if any of those things are not the case, then like you said, absolutely having someone designated to work that and process through that and participate in eradicating that kind of, but sometimes you don't have that. And there are instances I will tell you about micro invalidations and micro insults apart from micro assaults. Many times individuals that perpetuate microaggressions don't recognize that they are. Microaggressions is something that, just like privilege, just like bias, just like stereotyping, we all do in certain instances. And once we become aware that we do it, then the resulting piece is whether or not you're continuing to perpetuate that negative behavior or not. And so there is so much to unpack with what you've just said. So much to unpack, but we got 19 minutes left. So I appreciate you sharing that, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about that at another time. Maybe I'll get called back, maybe. Okay. So going back into some of the major issues surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace, you have the Great Resignation, invisible disabilities. Went the wrong way, my apologies. These are just some of the things that are impacting the work environment. Now, let me make sure everything is on here. I think I got everything. I don't know why that S is just hanging down there, but that S belongs to pronouns. Okay, so it's not just pronoun, it's pronouns. But is there, I'm already making a note that I need to include microaggressions to this, but is there any one of these topics that you're like, I don't get it. Why is this something that is impacting the work environment? What specifically about it is impacting the work environment? Is there any discussion, any comments about this particular slide?
So can you explain the non-smoke break? Summer asked that one. I'm with you, Summer.
So within the traditional work environment, brick and mortar buildings actually having to go into work, many organizations built in lunch breaks as well as 15-minute smoke breaks. And so there was a movement, if you will, of people that said, what about those individuals that just need a 15-minute break that don't smoke? Because many of the policies surrounding breaks and break time was associated specifically for individuals that smoked. And so this was something that was, it was a thing at one point, was people trying to advocate for individuals to just have a 15-minute break. They felt that the smoke break was not inclusive of others that may just need to walk around or may need to get fresh air or may need to walk away from the computer or whatever the case may be. So I'm glad that you asked that question. Thank you so very, very much. Anything else on this screen catching your eye? Going once.
Janelle put in the chat, what about Make America Great Again?
Yeah.
I was just about to say that, sorry. Okay, yes.
Okay, so that goes with conservative intolerance. And so the reason why this was, now granted, maybe it is no more. I've had this presentation for a minute. However, a few years back, there was a movement of individuals, especially within the college setting, where individuals that voted for a specific candidate felt that they could not share their views. Their views were not considered politically correct, and they were erased from the landscape of institutions because the messages a lot of people did not agree with. And so because of the, what is the word? because of the fact that these views were not necessarily appreciated in certain environments, many individuals that voted this way felt persecuted within their work environments or within different settings because of their political beliefs. And so it was a thing. I don't know if it still is a thing, if specifically Make America Great Again, but conservative intolerance, absolutely, especially within college settings. Republican student organizations and things were excluded from participating in certain student activities and things. They felt that their First Amendment was being violated. Their freedom of speech was violated, and so it was something that was impacting work environment and some other environments as well. We want to give a holistic view of some of the things that have impacted certain identities.
So we had a couple other things. I saw Roshonda put body modification. Mandy put being labeled the single mom.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, I'm gonna add that one. Yes, that's a really good one. Parental, I'll figure out how I'm gonna word that, but that's a really, really good one. And body modification. So whether or not a person has tattoos or piercings, how that impacts them within the work environment. Is it considered unprofessional to show your tattoos? Is it considered unprofessional to have piercings? And who is determining what is considered professional or unprofessional? The other pieces, even the color of one's hair, and whether or not certain business appropriateness is weighted the same for different cultural groups. Okay, so is a specific person with pink hair considered professional as opposed to another individual that has fire engine red hair? And what that, is there any cultural implications based on those policies? Did I miss anybody? Did I get everything? But I love the parental piece of that. And I'm actually going to add it. I don't have it up there, but I think that's something that absolutely impacts the work environment, definitely.
I can just comment real quick, guys, if you don't mind. I was a single mom with my first daughter, who's almost 20. I am so old, but I just recall times earlier in my career when people would be like talking about things at work, and I'd say, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" "Oh, we did this at happy hour last night. You couldn't come. You don't have a babysitter." So, that was an experience I definitely went through back in those days. So,
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
So going back, we've talked a bit about biases. What would you consider to be things that impact the biases that we hold? It can be in the work environment, it can be personally. What are some biases or what do you believe impacts the biases that we hold?
Upbringing.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
A person's
Experience.
Yeah, who they've met, who they've encountered, what their experiences are, how broad those experiences are.
Education.
Cultural conditioning.
Anybody else?
Hollywood. Put a lot of negative spin.
Yeah.
Some culture.
Good one.
Oh, this is good. I love it. Keep going. Give me some more.
Religious views.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Religious views.
Yes, absolutely.
Lack of exposure.
Good. That's real good.
I think social media and the media in general sometimes impacts our biases or helps to formulate them in some instances.
Absolutely. Stereotypes. And there's a couple of these, but stereotypes that goes into the media, that goes into upbringing, that goes into exposure, all of the, when you are making a statement about something based on an experience and a experience or something that you saw or heard, that goes into stereotyping component of it. It's an overgeneralization based on a component. Okay. So that impacts our biases, our privilege. So like you said, someone said upbringing. And so when we're talking about privilege, it's an unearned advantage or right provided to you based on something that you're born with, or something that you did not have to earn. And so your privilege absolutely impacts your biases. We were talking earlier these individuals are a part of the majority when it comes to their sexual orientation, and they have not had to, or orientation and or gender identity. And so they may be a heterosexual individual that has not had to contend with what it must be like to be in a space where you don't know if you're welcome there, if you don't know whether or not individuals are going to be persecutory towards you. And so that absolutely impacts the biases that we hold, as well as your own identity. So who you are as a person and what that means to you, that impacts your biases, right? And so looking at what an identity is, identity refers to how people conceptualize and or express their personalities and or group affiliations. So really quick right here, I'm looking and it's 2:52, and so I don't have very long. I got 8 minutes left, y'all. So this is gonna be the last activity that we do, but I need everyone. How many people are in here? We have 30 people minus myself, 29 individuals. So I expect for 29 individuals to participate, okay? Either auditorily, so unmute yourself or put your answer in the chat. I'm gonna ask you some questions, okay? And based on the questions that I ask, I don't need anyone to tell me your name when you provide this information, but based on the response that you have, I'm going to make certain assumptions about you based on that, okay? So the first question, let me just go through the wheel. We have work experience, education, political beliefs, family, organizational role, language and communication skills, income, religion, appearance, mental and physical ability, race and ethnicity, age, gender identity or expression, gender, national origin, and sexual orientation. Of these identities, which of these identities do you think about the most often? So either unmute yourself and tell me or put it in the chat. But tell me, which of these identities do you think about the most often?
For us?
Yes, for yourself, yes.
For myself, okay.
My race.
Mm-hmm.
My language and communication skills.
Absolutely.
Race and appearance, because I'm morbidly obese.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Gender identity.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Education and age.
Absolutely.
Age and work experience.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to transition over into the next question. Okay, so the last person that responded was PJ Osborne. Okay, so no more responses for that question. My second question is, which of these identities do you think about the least often? Okay, so I am looking and I am seeing that someone wrote gender, race, appearance, race, religion, appearance, age and education, political beliefs, national origin, income, gender identity, sexual orientation, origin, organizational role, income, physical and mental ability, appearance. Okay. So I am going to make some assumptions about you based on what was said. Now, what I'm about to ask you or what I'm about to speak about is very personal. And so if you do not feel comfortable with responding, you do not need to respond, okay? I just want to make sure, again, this is a brave and safe space. And so I want people to still feel comfortable. And so please do not answer if you do not feel comfortable with answering. But if you said that the thing that you thought about the least was national origin, I'm going to assume it's because you were born in the same country that you currently live. If you say your gender identity is the identity that you think about the least often, it's probably because you're a cisgender individual, which means that your sex assigned at birth is the same as you express as far as your gender. For language and communication skills, if that was the thing that you thought about the least, is because you speak the language of the country in which you currently live. For age, I'm going to assume that you are not over the age of 65. For ability, I'm going to assume it's because you are a non-disabled individual. For income, I'm going to assume that you do not live below the poverty line. For religion, I'm going to assume it's because you either do not subscribe to religion or you subscribe to the dominant religion of the country in which you currently live. And so if I made an assumption about you that was inaccurate and you are okay with expressing that it was inaccurate, let me know. If I made an assumption about you that was accurate, I love to hear that I'm right. So please feel free to let me know
You're
that
right,
I'm right. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Okay. Now, does anybody want to know why I'm able to make these assumptions? Well, since nobody asked, I'm going to tell y'all anyway, okay? It's because if it's the thing that you think about the least, more than likely it's because it's your privilege. Catch it, catch this tea that I just threw at you, okay? So again, if you were a person that you had a same-sex partner, that would not be the thing that you thought about the least. Every new environment that you go into, you have to decide if you're going to be out or not. You have to decide if you're going to put your family pictures on your desk. You have to make that determination, right? If you are an individual that is a trans individual, when you give your driver's license, if your driver's license does not match how you identify, you have to worry about whether or not someone is going to out you, whether or not someone's going to dead name you. That's something that would not be the thing that you thought about the least. If you were not born in this country, national origin would not be the last thing that you thought about, especially within the last few years. Okay, if you were of Muslim or Islamic religious beliefs after 9/11, that would not be the thing that you thought about the least. What else? Political beliefs. I will tell you this. I live in an environment where the people that I live around do not have the same political beliefs as myself. And that is definitely wasn't the last thing that I thought about when it was an election year. I felt in fear for my safety when it was an election year because of where I live. You understand what I'm saying? So the things that you said were things that you thought about the most. It's probably because that's probably where you are oppressed. So I heard someone say race, and I'm assuming that you are not Caucasian. Because as an African-American woman, as much as I have the competence, the experience, the educational background, people see me and what I look like first. And so you don't see a social worker first. You don't see a person that was Cornell educated. You don't see that. What you see is a Black woman, and I have to base, or you have to base your assumptions about me based on whatever stereotype that you have about people that look like me. And so with that being said, I feel like this is important. So many times when we think about privilege, we think of it from a Black and white perspective, but every single person that's on this call has a privilege of some sort. And when we're looking at it from the perspective of the work environment, are we using our privilege in order to make sure the environment around us is inclusive and equitable? Because the thing is, you have a privilege of a sort, then that privilege comes with power. That means that you're at tables and in conversations that others that may be a part of a marginalized group are not privy to, or may not feel the ability to speak up at. And so are you using your power to be able to support those around you? So y'all, I have gone over, and I am not even halfway finished with this topic. It's because you all are amazing and y'all was talking back to me, okay? With that being said, I've truly enjoyed you all so very much. I hope that I have the opportunity to come back and listen and glean from you all, because I've learned something as much as I hope that you all have learned something from me. And so I am going to turn this back over. Oh, I don't see my girl.
Yeah,
Did she
I
leave?
was gonna say she had to leave, so you'll be turning it back over to myself. Hey, thank you again, Brittany, on behalf of UPHS for hosting this presentation today. It was absolutely amazing. A lot of the topics that you hit on, just from a personal aspect, when I was an undergrad, I actually first started as an education major. So you hit a lot of educational theories that I used to do a lot of research in, such as Bloom's and Erik Erikson's 8 stages of psychological development and those kinds of things, and talking about how bias is developed and speaking on working in diverse populations. So I just want to say you've hit on a multitude of areas that I sure know that the body accepted a lot of things from and got a lot of gems from. I can already tell you, Chesley, I saw your comment. We are going to ask you to come back for a part 2. Because this is an amazing topic, and I believe that so many people that are here today, but even the people that were not here, need to have a chance to definitely engage you and this very needed topic in today's climate of engaging and working in diverse populations. As you can see, all of her information is in the chat. I just want to thank you all again on behalf of UPHS for signing on and logging on with us today. It sure seems like you all got a treat today, and we hope to see you all at our next session. Some information will be coming out about that very soon. It will actually be around building and maintaining a healthy team. And our presenter for that workshop will be Dr. Benny Bolden, the principal at R. Frank Nims Middle School. So please be on the lookout for that after spring break for all you education teachers and supervisors that work in the education realm. But later to the end of March for everyone else, it'll be probably the last date of March 31st at 10 a.m. So please come back and check us out for that one. And we will definitely have a part 2 to this as well. So thank you all again for coming in. Thank you again, Brittany, for coming on and being our featured speaker today on this workshop. And we hope to engage and speak with all of you soon again. And we hope that you have a great rest of your Tuesday.